Hello, everyone, and welcome to Walker Reads. I am your host, MJ Walker. Today, I will be bringing you the next installation in the series Rabinoe, Wizard Extraordinaire. If you are enjoying what you are listening and watching, please don't forget to like and subscribe. It truly helps me to develop my channel. Without further ado, I bring you the next episode in Rabinoe, Wizard Extraordinaire. Episode 21, Oak's Folly. Rabinoe and Eris made their way down the small dirt road on their way to Oak's Folly. The morning was creeping towards midday, and despite using his will magic to lighten the load in the small handcart, Rabinoe had a healthy sheen of sweat across his body. The barrels of mead were heavy, and his magic was unable to completely nullify the weight he pulled. It was a muggy and warm day, and the sun shone down brilliantly. Despite the trees lining the little road, their branches didn't quite extend out over it, and so Rabinoe was denied even a small portion of shade. His breathing had begun to labor, and through his mounting exhaustion, Rabinoe wondered if he'd be able to maintain the magic that made the cart movable. Eris had long since abandoned her post on his shoulders, and instead trotted along at the edge of the road, sticking to what little shade there was. She kept eyeing Rabinoe with concern. "Perhaps it's time to take a break, Rabbit. Sit in the shade and have some water. Your face has gotten very red." "You know," he huffed as he pulled the cart off to the side of the road, "you could always use your magic to help me pull this load." "What do you think I've been doing?" she said snidely. "Normally I abstain from helping you with your tasks, but really, Rabbit, you should have at least taken the man up on the wagon." Rabinoe set the Rabinoe set the handbars of the cart aside, releasing the magic on the wheels so it didn't go rolling away, and sat in the shade of the trees with a grateful sigh. "If I did that," he said, through closed eyes, "I wouldn't have been able to pull it. I would have had to also have taken him up on a donkey to pull it. And how would that task make me grow stronger?" "You very well could have focused on deepening your connection with the wind, for one," she said as she came and sat next to him, nudging the canteen she had brought from the cart. "There are plenty of ways you could have furthered your training without killing yourself in the process." Rabinoe took a deep pull from the canteen, replacing its cap before regarding the cat. "Is that concern I hear on your voice? Really, Eris, I'm honored." "Oh, shut up," Eris hissed. "What in the hells would I do if you passed out on the road, Drag your heavy ass back to Oak's Terrace?" "Now that," Rabinoe said, cracking an eye and regarding the cat with a grin, "would be amusing to see." "Amusing or not," she shot back, "we would also be abandoning the mead. I doubt that Mac fellow would be happy to hear that. And he gave me such a lovely breakfast. The gristle on that bacon was divine." "I swear," Rabinoe chuckled, "all it takes is a good meal for anyone to win over your heart." "Take note," she said sternly. "You never feed me." "That's because we have limited supplies," Rabinoe returned, "and you always make a disgusting show of catching critters and devouring them in the cart." "I'm a cat," Eris glared. "Deal with it." "I have no choice in that regard, dear Eris," Rabinoe said, rubbing at his shoulders. "But noted. Perhaps I will include you in future meals." "That's better," Eris said, licking at her paws to show she was done talking. "Hey," Rabinoe said, a thought coming to mind. "There was one thing I've been meaning to talk to you about. I just keep getting distracted." "What is it?" she asked without even looking up from her grooming. "The wheel compass," Rabinoe replied. "You never got a chance to tell me how to tune it to my own signature." That gargantuan asshole interrupted us. Eris snorted in delight. "That is true. Our little Detour surely put a stopper on that conversation. Rabinoe pulled the compass from his pocket, where he had stored it that morning in the hopes that he could have this exact conversation. How do I do it? He laid the compass open on his palm, and as before, the needle seemed to bounce around wildly, swinging between himself and Eris. Eris came closer and looked at the compass in his palm. Flip it over, she said, and he did. Do you see the small indentation in the middle there? Rabinoe looked closer and did indeed see a small indentation in the middle of the compass, something he had never noticed before. It was such a small change in the metal casing that it was nearly imperceptible. I never noticed it before, he said, but I do now. Good, Eris said. Now put the tip of your index finger of your dominant hand, that's your right hand if I remember correctly, directly into the indentation. Rabinoe did. Good. Now I want you to channel your will into the compass. Channel my will into the compass? Rabinoe asked. How do I do that? The same way you would channel your will if you were casting, she answered matter-of-factly, only without the casting. Rabinoe nodded and closed his eyes, going to that place in his mind where he could interact with his well freely. He sat in the nondescript room and dipped his hand into his well. He then focused on pushing his magic into the compass. It took a couple of tries to direct his will in such a way, seeing as he hadn't done that before, but after a few failures, he thought he had it. He opened his eyes and saw that the tip of his finger where it met the compass was glowing. He gasped in surprise. Don't stop, Eris chided. You almost have it. Rabinoe kept the flow of magic going, and soon the glow expanded to completely cover the compass, making it shine brightly in the shade of the trees. A moment later, the glow pulsed, once, twice, and then it faded, seeming to get sucked into the compass itself. Once the glow vanished, a soft chime sounded, though Rabinoe wasn't sure if he had heard it with his ears or if it had only been in his mind. Good, Eris said in a pleased tone. Well done, Rabbit. Is that it? Rabinoe asked. Flip it over and find out. So Rabinoe flipped over the compass, his eyes widening as the needle of the compass pointed, unwavering, at Eris. He laughed. He just couldn't help it. It had been such a simple task, and now the compass was an invaluable tool. I did it, Rabinoe exclaimed. I did it, Eris, I did it. Yes, you did, she said with a smile. Now, you must do that same procedure every so often to keep the bond between you and the compass strong. If you let it waver, it will not be as accurate as it could be. The needle could be pulled towards you inadvertently, making the information it provides you useless. Do you understand? Rabinoe nodded. Yes, Eris. Good, Eris said, pleased. Congratulations. You now have your very first tool of will magic. Rabinoe grinned from ear to ear. Thank you, Eris. You are welcome, Rabbit, she said. Now, if you are feeling rested enough, we should continue our journey to Oak's Folly. Rabinoe nodded once more. I am. And it was true. Though they hadn't rested in the shade of the trees for long, his success in sinking the compass to his signature had rejuvenated his spirits. He stood and returned to the handcart, gripping the handles and letting his will work on the wheels and lighten his load. He found that this task was growing ever easier. Day by day, Rabinoe grew stronger as a will mage, and that fact absolutely delighted him. He knew wherever the wily old Linrem was in this realm of spirits, he was smiling down upon his pupil. It did indeed take the remainder of the day to cover the rest of the distance from Oak's Terrace to Oak's Folly. The sun was nearing the horizon, kissing the top of the trees along the road, when Rabinoe spotted the first signs of habitation ahead, smoke curling into the sky from either chimneys or cooking fires. The thought of being close put extra energy into his steps, and he began to chew up the remaining distance to the small village. Just before the first buildings came into view through the trees, however, Eris bounded from the cart, landing on Rabinoe's shoulders, staring ahead with a look of concentration and concern. "Stop the cart, Rabbit," she said quietly. Rabinoe did as he was told, eyeing the cat and trying to see what she was looking at. "What is it?" "Do you feel that?" she answered cryptically. "Feel what?" Rabinoe asked, still looking around wildly. "Open your mind, Rabbit," she said softly, "and search ahead of us." Rabinoe immediately expanded his awareness towards the village and was assaulted by a barrage of magic. Unlike the magic he had sensed up until now, this felt wrong, tainted. He screwed up his face as if he had smelled a horrid scent. "What is that?" "Dark magic," Eris answered in a low growl. "Something is very wrong here." "Dark magic?" Rabinoe repeated. "I thought that kind of thing was only in fairy tales." "Many things in stories have some sort of root in reality, Rabbit," Eris answered, her gaze still locked firmly ahead. "And it appears that Oak's Folly is ripe with it." Rabinoe felt his heart begin to beat faster. "What's going on?" "I do not know," Eris answered, "but we are going to find out." "What do we do?" "Stash the cart in the bushes over there." She inclined her head to the side of the road. "We're going to continue on foot and not on the main road." Rabinoe did as he was told, pushing the cart into the foliage until it was hidden from sight. Eris jumped from his shoulders and waited until he was ready before she started stalking through the trees, prowling like the little hunter she was. She led the way deeper into the woods, making slow progress to ensure they remained as silent as possible. The sun had finally cleared the horizon, and its last rays were bathing the sky in a kaleidoscope of yellows, oranges, and reds. The trees all around covered them in deep shadows. The pair had crept around the village to what Rabinoe estimated to be a quarter of the way around the circular clearing the habitation occupied. Eris signaled to Rabinoe with a tilt of her head, and he crouched down, following her to get close enough to see what was going on inside. As they drew even with the last of the trees that would provide them with adequate cover, they dropped to the ground and peered into the village with the failing light. Oak's Folly appeared to be about half as big as Oak's Terrace was, roughly 24 buildings neatly ringing a commons in the middle. Lights were flaring into life in some of the homes, and a pair of torches were dancing through the darkness as they morosely lit street lamps spaced periodically around the commons. What the torches and the street lamps revealed, Rabinoe simply could not believe. His heart beat rapidly in his chest, and he fought to keep the panic from his breathing. Grotesque creatures, looking to be a conglomeration of many wild animals stuck together, patrolled the commons. They stood easily 6 to 7 feet tall, each having a different number of arms and legs. Rabinoe saw the heads of boars, bears, oxen, even a moose, perched atop the ramshackle creatures. What made Rabinoe's heart stop and stabbed a deep spike of panic into his spine was the dark purple light that glowed from their eyes. A small group of people were sitting huddled together in the commons, hands and feet tied, and ropes gagging them. Rabinoe counted at least 20 of the creatures guarding over the square. Whatever had happened here, wherever those abominations had come from, they were holding the people of Oak's Folly hostage. Eris nudged him, breaking him from his wide-eyed, unbelieving stare, and tilted her head back the way they had come. Rabinoe nodded, and the pair crawled silently away from Oak's Folly. When they were out of sight from the village, Eris stopped crawling and began pacing in tight little circles. Rabinoe sat on his haunches, trying to come to terms with what he had seen. What are those things? Rabinoe asked softly. Their eyes, Eris. I know. I saw them too, she answered in a hard tone, her pacing never ceasing. Someone, or a group of someones, has reanimated corpses. But this goes beyond base-level necromancy. You saw their bodies. Whoever did this constructed those creatures. Rabinoe rubbed at his face in disbelief. Necromancy? He hissed. How is that even possible? It's just like overriding another's will, Rabbit, Eris answered. It's not something that is taught widely because it is incredibly difficult and dangerous to practice, not to mention sinister. You're saying those things are constructs of will magic? Rabinoe asked, aghast. Yes, she said in clipped tones. Though the darkest brand of will magic there is. I don't understand, Rabinoe said, rubbing his face once more. How is this even possible? It takes a very powerful and very skilled mage to even consider raising the dead, she answered. The sheer volume of power necessary for the spells is more than the vast majority of will mages can handle. What concerns me most is how they were put together. That speaks of practice. Whoever did this has been doing such things long before now. So what? Rabinoe asked. Are those things alive? In the loosest definition of the word, yes, Eris said. They walk, they fight, they feed. But their life force animating them is not their own. It may be possible to raise the dead, but the essence of the creature reanimated is never what it was. To put it simply, once a creature is dead, its spirit is gone. All it leaves behind is a body which can be hijacked, brought back to life. But the spirit will never return. Those creatures are essentially puppets bound to the will of whoever brought them back to life. Rabinoe leaned into the nearest bush and vomited. He sat back up and wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. Disgusting isn't an adequate description. No, Eris said, her eyes softening as she looked at Rabinoe. Those creatures are abominations. I had hoped we would travel a great deal more before I even spoke of them to you. Yet, here we are. Have you seen magic like this before? Rabinoe asked. Yes, Eris snarled. And when I did, Lin Rem ripped that mage limb from limb. Hells, Rabinoe swore softly. Eris, what do we do? Run, she said bitterly. This is far beyond either of our capacity to do anything about. We must retreat and report this to the authorities at once. Run? Rabinoe said, disbelieving. Run? Are you kidding me, Eris? What about those people back there? Who knows how much time they have left before whoever made those creatures decides to practice on them? There is nothing we can do, she snarled viciously. If we go charging in there, we will either end up dead or tied up right next to those folks. Fuck that, Rabinoe snapped. I don't care what the danger is. I am not running away and leaving those innocent people to whatever twisted fate awaits them. And if I'm not running, neither are you. Rabbit, Eris said, the savagery gone from her tone and replaced with sorrow. You do not understand the level of power we face. We haven't even laid eyes on the bastard responsible for this. Even if we were able to somehow take out the numerous creatures in that village, the mage responsible would still be free to do it again. No, Rabinoe said, his face setting into a determined scowl. The potency of that magic I felt is fresh. The mage responsible for this is either in that village or very close by. An astute observation, but the fact still remains, Eris argued. They are far beyond our expertise. Again, Rabinoe said, I don't care. I am going to do something about this, so you might as well help too. You said you fought things like this before. How do we kill them? Eris sighed a deep, soul-weary sigh. That bull-headed stubbornness is going to get you killed someday. Then I'll die doing what was right, Eris. She smiled sadly. It is one of the things Linrem loved most about you, despite how much it gets me into hard situations. I love it too. Rabinoe nodded, not trusting to vocalize anything about Lynn at that moment. What do we do, Eris? Help me out here, please. Eris sighed once more. Fine, she said slowly. If you're determined to fight, then I will too. But we are going to do this right. We have to approach this in a way that provides us the greatest chance of coming out alive. Okay, Rabinoe nodded. So what's the plan? Eris began pacing back and forth once more. She was silent for several long moments before she sat on her haunches and looked at Rabinoe. Did you get a good look at those abominations? More of a look than I've ever wanted, Rabinoe said grimly. Eris nodded. Did you see the spike driven into their hearts? Rabinoe's head snapped up. What? It is what ties them to this world and their master's will, she said slowly. A spike of copper and gold driven completely through the heart. How? Rabinoe began saying but stopped himself, shaking his head. No, that's not important now. What do we do about it? We have to remove the spike, Eris said grimly. Until we do that, we could inflict as much damage as we want to the body, and they will keep coming. It is the only way to break the magic. Eris, Rabinoe said, those things are huge. How are we supposed to get close enough to pull a spike from their chest? You leave that part to me, Eris replied. Rabinoe frowned. You're going to take on all of those abominations by yourself. If things go as planned, I won't have to fight them all, Eris answered. Besides, don't you forget that I am a force to be reckoned with, Rabbit. And what? Rabinoe's frown deepened into a scowl. I'm supposed to just sit back and watch? No, Eris said. You have a far more important and dangerous task. Which is? Rabinoe prompted. I need you, Eris began, to find and eliminate the mage controlling them. We can pull out all of the spikes and still be in a difficult position if that mage isn't handled. On top of that, if the mage escapes, they are likely to repeat this whole affair elsewhere, where we aren't around to stop them. Rabinoe blew out a breath and rubbed his face wearily again. How am I supposed to find the mage controlling them? They could be anywhere, Eris. Not just anywhere, Eris countered. Remember, they have to be close enough to feed the magic keeping those things alive. And you yourself felt how fresh the magic was. Furthermore, considering the whole town has been taken hostage, we can surmise that it is very likely there is something here the mage is looking to acquire. If they aren't in one of those buildings, then they will be in the woods nearby. Great, Rabinoe said sarcastically. So I'm supposed to just blindly search around a village held hostage by abominations while you risk your life to save the townsfolk? Eris hissed. Don't be a fool, boy, she said harshly. You will have the will compass. That alone should assist greatly in finding the mage. And do not forget the principles of attuning to the wind that I have been teaching you. If you must search the woods, the wind can be of great help. I don't like this, Eris, Rabinoe said, shaking his head. I don't like this one bit. I think we should both be taking on those creatures. What did I say? Eris hissed once more. Taking out those creatures is less important than taking out the mage bringing them to life. I'm counting on you, Rabbit. The quicker you find them and disrupt the magic, the easier it will be for me to eliminate the abominations. A race against the clock, Rabinoe groaned. Great. You don't have to like it, she said. You just have to do it. All right, Rabinoe said after a moment. So what's the plan? Eris grinned maliciously. Here's what we're going to do. End. Episode 21. Oak's Folly. If you are enjoying what you are watching and listening to, please don't forget to like and subscribe. It truly helps me to develop my channel. Furthermore, tune in every Monday morning at 7 a.m. Pacific Standard Time as I release new episodes. Thank you so much for listening, and have a wonderful day.